Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Now let's get straight into a conversation. Tonight we're focusing on the 2023 UN Climate Change Conference, which is also the 28th session of the Conference of Parties COP28 and its gains for Nigeria. Now joining me for this conversation is Ajuri Ngelale, the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight, Mr. Ngelale. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Good evening to you and good evening to our esteemed viewers here at home and around the world.
Right. So first, what would you say prompted Nigeria's attendance at the COP28?
Well, certainly whenever you are referring to the largest economy in Africa, the largest population in Africa, and the largest democracy in Africa, it's only natural that you're talking about having a robust participation in such a globally significant event as COP28 certainly was, holding in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Of course, the nation followed as His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu really led the charge, saying to the international community that indeed Nigeria stands ready and prepared to lead the African continent in the larger mission to, very gradually decarbonize the global economy. As Africa's largest energy producer, it is only right and appropriate that it was President Bola Tinubu who said to the international community that Nigeria is ready to play its role to ensure an appropriate, responsible, and transparent transition to net zero. And obviously that has to do with several factors and features which the President so eloquently communicated to the international community on that stage. So really, as we get into the conversation, I'm sure there are a lot of various aspects that we'll look at, but it's needless to say that President Bola Tinubu did the nation proud in representing Nigeria's position on these vital global matters.
So how well is Nigeria able to align its climate policy with the theme of the summit?
Well, the nation has been very proactive under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu. Look, this is a president and an administration that understands the trend of events that is unfolding around the world with respect to the responsible use of fossil fuels and the role that fossil fuel utilization will play in the present state and the future state of the Nigerian economy. So the position is very clear. Mr. President has said that there is no hypocrisy or contradiction between ensuring that we maximize available natural resources with respect to oil, but especially gas in the present moment, to obviously maximize our capacity to fund what will be a very significant transition to renewable energy sources across multiple sectors of the Nigerian economy. I think he's saying that on the one hand, you use natural gas as a key transition fuel to power, to obviously generate your revenues, empower the treasure base that you will now be using to transit into renewable energies. But at the same time, while you're maximizing your transition fuels, your present transition fuels, you're also ensuring that you have a very clear vision and agenda for how you are going to decarbonize multiple sectors of your economy across electric power production, transportation, agriculture, education, and obviously manufacturing and many others. So it's a pragmatic approach that the president is taking to say, yes, we know we have extensive wealth with respect to natural gas and other fossil fuels. We are going to leverage on that to be able to fund what will be a responsible and gradual transition to renewable energy. But we are not starting from zero. We are not presenting a picture to the international community of a country that simply wants to wake up and start doing something. We have told the international community that we have long started. In fact, the Federal Republic of Nigeria was the first African country to present a robust transition plan to net zero by 2060. We were one of the fastest developing countries anywhere in the world to have done so. And we have signed up our national oil company, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, onto the organization of oil industry entities that are committed to gradual decarbonization. We call it a decarbonization accelerator. We are the first, we presented our oil company as the first national oil company anywhere in Africa to sign up to that register of the decarbonization accelerator. So we are not simply talking about what we're talking about. We are already walking the talk. We are going to continue to do so. And we have made a clear case to the international community that in line with President Bola Tinubu's aggressive pursuit and promotion of foreign direct investment into the country, that we see an alignment, a marriage, potentially, between Mr. President's investment drive and the larger need to promote green economic development and green economic opportunities across multiple sectors of our economy, not just for the benefit of the international, of the global climate, but also with a pragmatic sense of what our people need now with respect to jobs and opportunities to empower our communities to be part of that larger process of, battling back against desertification, ensuring that we are planting trees with multitudes of Nigerian youths across all local government areas of the Federation, to ensure that we are positioning our country as a beacon or a hub of new investment in the global green economy that is swiftly developing. This is the vision of Mr. President. He made that case in front of the international community over the last few days, and he's going to continue to press the message that we can have the best of both worlds. We can take advantage of our transition fuels to fund our green economic development plans, but we have a very clear eye on the future, on the day when oil and gas will not be the predominant energy source for the world. So we're focused on today, but we're also focused very much on the energies of tomorrow. And I think it's going to be important for us to get into what some of those energies will be.
All right, so breaking down the kinds of agreements reached at COP28 for Nigeria, how will you describe them?
Yes, so His Excellency Mr. President had the privilege of representing the entire developing world, not just Africa, not just Asia, not just Latin America, but all developing economies. Essentially, he was the representative of the global South at large at a very, very important summit on methane and non-CO2 greenhouse gas emissions. Essentially, it was a summit at which the United States Presidential Climate Envoy, Mr. John Kerry, as well as the Chinese Special Presidential Climate Envoy, Xi Jinping, effectively sat with His Excellency Mr. President, as well as the President of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, with, major dignitaries present in the audience, the President of the World Bank, other heads of state from around the world. And effectively, the President communicated that Nigeria is committing to a cap or a reduction and eventual elimination on the emission of methane and other non-CO2 greenhouse gas emissions. This was a landmark. It was a point at which, through the person of President Bola Tinubu, Nigeria really stood as the face of the global South with respect to the commitments we are ready to make on the reduction of these harmful greenhouse gas emissions. It's strategic because not only does it send the signal that Nigeria is ready to lead Africa on this in this movement, it also sends a signal that Nigeria is ready to lead the entire global South in this movement. obviously as the largest energy producer on the continent, the largest population on the continent, the largest economy on the continent. But beyond that, it also sends a signal to the green investment community, which we know is a community that within it holds trillions of dollars potentially of new investment capital. We're sending a signal to them that we are the place to bring those funds. We are the country that's ready to partner with you, remove all the bottlenecks, remove all the encumbrances, so that we can have clean energy systems, so that we can have solar-powered, wind farms around the country, producing electricity, so that we can have solar panel production facilities all across this country, manufacturing solar panels that will power our schools, our markets, our farms, and our industries across the country. This is the vision of Mr. President, saying, look, we are ready. We understand what the international community expects of any partner with respect to green economic development, and we are putting everything on the line, everything in place to ensure that you understand that Nigeria is the place to bring those dollars. And he has made that case very effectively, and he's not done. He had a series of meetings on the sidelines at COP28 with major investors, major philanthropists, major actors who, for example, like the chairman of the UN Climate Advisory Group, Mr. Michael Bloomberg, a multi-billionaire who obviously not just runs the Bloomberg Media Group, but also has extensive philanthropic activity with respect to billions of dollars worth of investments and donations to green economic development initiatives around the world. Mr. President met with him on the sidelines. They had a very positive conversation, and I can report exclusively here that an engagement has begun between the office of the president and Bloomberg with respect to their office of global partnerships. There is a lot that Mr. President is doing, some of which we cannot yet announce because it's still being cooked, some of which we can announce with respect to, for example, the agreement with Siemens, which I know Nigerians are very interested in.
All right. So I would also like you to help us bring to light the kind of contents of discussion or the contents of discussions at COP28.
Well, let's maybe start from the landmark Siemens agreement, which essentially is an accelerated performance agreement being signed between the federal government of Nigeria and, of course, Siemens Energy, a German conglomerate that obviously deals with all aspects of the energy industry. But with respect to this agreement, it deals with electric power transmission. Essentially, what this is a manifestation of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's commitment during the campaigns as part of the Renewed Hope agenda to ensure that we revive and resuscitate and effectively implement the Presidential Power Initiative with Siemens Energy that was started by the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, but was not effectively implemented due to a series of man-made as well as non-man-made factors with respect to COVID-19 and some of the other things that happened that short-circuited that process. But the president came in on the mandate and assurance to Nigerians that he was going to resuscitate that program and that he was going to see it through to implementation. He has honored that commitment, which is obviously one of the trademarks of his administrative history. Let me say that this commitment is landmark for a few reasons. One is that it puts a very clear timeline on the schedule of delivery with respect to how we're going to transform the Nigerian power transmission grid. Effectively, what we are going to do within this agreement is we are going to give end-to-end contracting to Siemens Energy to ensure that they not only produce the infrastructure that will be used to upgrade the nation's transmission grid, substations, tens of thousands of kilometers of power lines, and many of the other supplemental parts of that process. They will manufacture it. They will also be responsible for delivering it into the country. They will finally be responsible for installing the technology they've manufactured in the country where it's needed. As a result of that, effectively what it's going to mean for Nigerians and the Nigerian economy is that right now, today in the country, we have approximately 12 to 13,000 megawatts of power generation capacity, meaning that today, if all was right, if all was uhuru, effectively Nigeria would be able, we have the inbuilt capacity now to produce about 13,000 megawatts of electricity. Now, the problem, of course, the reason why we're not able to do that at the moment is essentially a convoluted set of shortfalls that have their origins in really what was a failed privatization exercise of the electric power industry in 2013 under the administration then at the federal level. What that meant was you had a series of investors who bidded for Nigerian power generation companies as well as power distribution companies. Transmission was kept with government under the TCN. But the power generation investors and the power distribution investors, and I don't want to paint with one broad brush, because you do have some of the investors who have done very well. When you look at, investors like Tony Elumelu, who've been able to do a great turnaround job at Ngelale power plant. And there are many, there are a few other such stories where we had legitimate investors who are doing legitimate business and they're doing a great job with the assets that they took over. But unfortunately, they are in the minority. A large proportion of those who inherited those assets through that privatization process simply were either technically incompetent or they did not have the needed capital required to make the investments they needed to make to upgrade those facilities so that they would be workable, so that Nigerians could actually reap the reward of that privatization exercise. In fact, there were a series of instances in which you had absolute and outright fraud, where you had briefcase investors who did not have the money, but had connections to those who were in power at the time. They would effectively go to international banks, get high value dollar loans from those banks internationally, right? So that they would essentially fill their banks and have these big bank balances when they're doing the bidding to show that, yes, we have money to be able to revitalize these assets that we're going to be taking over. As soon as they won the bid with these fraudulent balance sheets, they essentially paid back those loans to the international banks, meaning that they now have the asset. They can hold the nation to ransom, but they don't even have the capital now to be able to upgrade the facilities that they fraudulently appeared to be able to upgrade at the time that the privatization exercise was happening. Now, what that led to was a situation in which the power generation companies had capacity to generate a certain amount of power, which is more than the 4,000 megawatts that Nigerians receive. But the problem was that because of frailties on the transmission grid, but especially because of frailties amongst the distribution companies that had now been privatized, because these distribution company owners did not have the capital to upgrade the distribution facilities, what was now happening was the power generation companies are generating too much power for the distribution companies to be able to receive, because they haven't made the necessary investments due to the failures of the privatization exercise that I've just laid out. And as a result of that, you now had a situation where the distribution companies that, if all was working well, they would have been able to receive the generated power, pay the generation companies the money they need to sustain generation by through the funds they receive from the end users. That is the Nigerian customer who receives the electric power from the distribution companies. Because the distribution companies aren't working, they're not able to remit and pay for generated power, meaning that the generation companies now have to scale down the extent of power they're producing, because they know that there's really not anybody to pay for the power they're producing. So you basically have a situation where we have all this stranded power. So now what we are saying is that once we can effectively step in through this accelerated performance agreement and ensure that the transmission grid in the country can effectively wheel more of the generated power in the country into the homes and businesses of Nigerians in partnership with the distribution companies, then what that now is going to mean is that generation companies are going to be able to purchase more gas and produce more power and get closer to their peak production, which is the 13,000 megawatts that we're talking about. So the Siemens program, the accelerated program, effectively unlocks power generation in the country. It unlocks the wheeling, the transmission to the distribution companies, and works with the distribution companies to facilitate the upgradation of their infrastructure so that the newly generated power, as a result of the working transmission grid and the investments that they can now make as a result, will finally get into the homes and businesses of Nigerians, which will obviously have transformative effect on the national economy in our efforts to industrialize under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu. So that agreement was signed under the direct witness of President Bola Tinubu, as well as Germany's Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This is kind of step one of a larger step, of a larger plan, but we have now concluded on step one, and I can assure you with first-hand authority on this, that the President is committed. He's ready to put every official on the line that needs to be on the line to ensure that, unlike what happened under the previous administration, that officials are held to account for the performance benchmarks that have been set by this agreement that has been signed by the federal government of Nigeria.
All right. So before we get to what you think Nigeria stands to gain from this event moving forward, I'd like you to talk to us about this multi-donor special fund, which is a sustainable energy fund for Africa. What about it this year?
Indeed, one of the, I think, major breakthroughs of COP28, particularly in comparison to previous COP summits, was the fact that there was an activation, finally, of the Loss and Damage Fund. This is the fund, effectively, that is dedicated toward the financing and sponsorship of green energy, or I should say climate conscious and green economic development projects and programs in the developing world. It's really a recognition on the part of the wealthy countries to say, look, we understand that humanity is now at this cliff's edge because of the U.S. Industrialization, because of Chinese industrialization, because of the massive emissions that these two major economies have obviously put into the ozone layer, into the environment, have now led us to where we are. They now recognize the rich and developed economies of the world, that they have a responsibility to be the primary sponsors of the solution against the fact that they were the primary, causative agents of the problem that we're collectively suffering together. So that fund has now been activated for the first time. In Copenhagen in 2009, there was a promise by the developed economies that $100 billion annually would be set aside for the financing of these green economic projects and programs within developing nations around the world. Obviously, for the last 15 years, there has been absolute lethargy and really an irresponsible evasion of commitment by the wealthy economies of the world. It is only this year at COP28 that has now been activated, and that trend has now been switched over into manifestation. So we're happy about that. It's a good start. It was, I think, very symbolic that it was actually President Bola Tinubu who stood before the representatives of the U.S. and Chinese economies and climate advocacy campaigns at COP28 and said to them, essentially, it's about time. It's about time. We're happy the two of you have finally woken up to your responsibilities. He had the courage and boldness to say that in front of them. And the point was well taken because now you have the activation of that fund. We're expecting now to have hundreds of billions of dollars find its way into that fund, which will go toward, countries that are clearly making a case that they are serious, that they are committed, and that they are ready to be not just recipients of funds, no, but active partners in tangible, deliverable projects that will not only lead the world toward this transition to net zero, but will also lead to a pervasive buy-in to what will be a new green global economy where industries around the world in both developed countries as well as developing countries will be running on renewable energy solutions. When we talk about renewable energy solutions, what exactly are we talking about? His Excellency President Bola Tinubu was very clear when he was participating in the compact with Africa by the G20 in Berlin, Germany recently, that Nigeria is ready to throw its full weight behind the exploration, the production, and the distribution of blue and green hydrogen. We recognize that right now there is a very aggressive move on the part of even major petroeconomies like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They are recognizing even themselves at that level of fossil fuel production that there is a need to switch over. That yes, we're going to maximize the opportunities of today that fossil fuels provide. We're going to do it responsibly, but we are doing it with a clear eye toward the future with respect to green and renewable energy. So they have already began investing billions of dollars in hydrogen production. Where we are is the president has said to the international community that Nigeria is following suit, that we are not going to wait until oil and gas is no longer viable before we begin to turn our attention to renewable energy sources, particularly the high value ones when we talk about green and blue hydrogen production. Now, how does this work? There are two major forms of hydrogen, effectively. On the one hand, you have green hydrogen, which is totally fossil fuel independent, meaning that it is produced from purely renewable energy sources. It can be produced by any nation in the world as a result of that. Green energy, green hydrogen rather, is effectively produced through a process called electrolysis, in which an electric current is deployed to essentially separate, carbon dioxide from a water molecule, so that you can actually have hydrogen separated from it and placed in a fuel cell that can now be stored and used and eventually reconverted into electrical energy sources. So now how it's going to work is this. On the one hand, you have the green energy that can be green hydrogen that can be produced by electrolysis, which is an expensive process. It requires massive investment, which is why Mr. President is very wisely going to the international community to say, look, we are ready to do this, but we're going to do it in partnership with you. Then the second aspect of hydrogen production, or the second form rather, is blue hydrogen. This is interesting because we have a comparative advantage as a major gas producer. Blue hydrogen, unlike green hydrogen that is essentially derived from purely, clean energy, blue hydrogen is derived from natural gas. Effectively, there's a process that is known as a steam methane reformation process that natural gas is put through to essentially put natural gas in. Through this steam methane reforming process, at the end of that process, you have a separation between the hydrogen, the carbon dioxide from that gas. Now, what now happens is the blue hydrogen that is removed from the natural gas is stored in a tank. The carbon dioxide itself is stored in a tank. Now, you're creating a circular carbon economy where even the carbons that we're all running away from, right, that we say is so harmful, we are able to alienate it, we're able to isolate it, store it, and potentially use that raw carbon effectively into what can be reconverted into chemical production and other industrial uses. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you have blue hydrogen that you have extracted from your natural gas resources that can now power your economy without worrying about harmful CO2 emissions, because it's already been extracted through the methane steam reformation process. This is the future. This is what India is already investing massively in. This is what Saudi Arabia is already investing massively in. This is what the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, is telling the international community. We are ready to work with you, bring in the resources. We will turn our natural gas resources into decarbonized energy that can power the future of the Nigerian economy as well as the larger African economy from its Nigerian base. This is the argument we're making to the international community. Hydrogen is going to be a major part of what we do with respect to, yes, you're going to have your wind-based energy production. You're going to have your solar-based energy production. You're going to have your natural gas-based energy production. But we are now saying you're going to have this hydrogen-based energy production that will be clean, that will show that not only will Africa do this, but that Nigeria will lead the way in doing so for the benefit of the Nigerian workers that will be employed across all the sub-value chains within this new green economic, green economic structure that we're going to be operating, but also for the larger benefit of the Nigerian economy with respect to new revenues, tax revenues, and other forms of revenue expansion that will take place in the country. Healing the planet and taking maximum advantage of the financial opportunities and economic opportunities that are presented is within the vision of President Bola Tinubu. He's committed to it. He said it to me this morning in his office. He's committed to it. He wants to do it, and he's going to drive it everywhere he goes. And this is something that Nigerians have every reason to be excited about.
All right.